That's right. I don't think Morgan Ortagus is going to be making any outrageous Holocaust comparisons. You may know the name from her time as a State Department spokeswoman during the Trump administration in the thick of all the history that was being made during the Abraham Accords. Ortagus has announced a congressional run. She'll be running for Congress in Tennessee's 5th District, which, due to redistricting, has now flipped Republican, and so she has a real shot at it. Ortagus, with an incredible backstory, grew up in an evangelical Christian household and eventually converted to Judaism, not the traditional way, but through the route of Baghdad and Riyadh. Ortagus spoke with I-24 News about why she's running for Congress in her very unique conversion to Judaism, in addition to her time in the State Department during that historic mark of the Abraham Accords. Here is Morgan Ortagus in our interview with her.
Most people who know you, who recognize your name, know you from your time at the State Department as a spokesperson. Obviously, you have a deeper breadth than that, intelligence and treasury, U.S. aid work as well. But as they say, all politics are local. So how do you present yourself to the voting base there as someone who has a knowledge of and can handle local issues while bringing your foreign policy experience into the fold?
Absolutely. So my husband and I joined the local temple, Shereth Israel, Orthodox temple. So we've been going there for the past year and really just started when I moved here. I wasn't thinking about politics at all. I moved to Tennessee for the reason that so many people do, which is a better life for your children. You know, I wanted my daughter to grow up in a place with conservative values. I wanted her to grow up in a place where people aren't censored, where people aren't silenced for what they think and for what they believe. And that goes on right now so much around America. It's actually quite scary that you are silenced for your political beliefs, you know, silenced if you work for President Trump. And listen, when I was State Department spokesperson, I didn't let the Chinese, the Russians, or the Iranians silence me. And as Tennessee's representative and Congress and Middle Tennessee's representative, I'm not going to let anyone silence me there either. And I'm going to stand up for the people here who feel like they may not have a voice.
What do you intend to bring to the table in terms of foreign policy, specifically Middle East foreign policy, which you handled so deeply there at the State Department?
Well, I think Middle Tennessee will certainly have an interesting representative in Congress for me. I am a mother, a wife, a veteran. I'm Jewish, national security experience, business experience. So I think that there's something in my bio and my background that a lot of people can relate to. Listen, certainly in foreign policy, you know, you and I, you've done many interviews with me. I could go around the world, but let's start with the Middle East because that was so important for me. As you know, I was a part of Abraham Accords with President Trump and Jared Kushner, Mike Pompeo. And it's so funny because when I first started out in my career working in national and foreign policy issues, I always thought and hoped that one day in the culmination of my career that we'd be able to have some sort of peace in the Middle East, some sort of breakthrough that I worked on. I didn't expect it to happen midway through my career. And when we were able to, with the Abraham Accords, get 4 peace deals between Israel and Arab states, the first in 26 years. All of this happened, by the way. I was working on this. I was very pregnant. I had a baby, a little girl, 2 days after the election. And it will be forever ingrained in my memory, sitting in the Oval Office with President Trump twice, whenever he conducted calls in between former Prime Minister Netanyahu and the leaders in UAE and Bahrain and Sudan. This is just, I remember looking around the room and hearing President Trump conduct the call. This is before we had the really big outdoor event that everyone saw. And when we were in the Oval Office, I thought, how am I going to explain to my daughter what the Middle East used to look like before President Trump? You know, I'm going to have to tell her stories about, well, if you wanted to go to Jerusalem and you wanted to go to Dubai, you had to carry 2 different passports. And she's going to look at me and think that's as odd as a landline phone. And that's because of President Trump and the world that my Jewish daughter will grow up in, the world that little, Emirati children and Arab children in Bahrain and Sudan, the world that they will grow up in is that it's perfectly normal to go to Israel for spring break, or it's perfectly normal to see, an Israeli at a souk, in the market in Manama. And for me to be able to be a part of that is exciting, but you just don't, it's not magic, as you know, you don't just get there by happenstance. You get there from 4 years of putting policies in place that were counterintuitive in Washington. Now, they shouldn't have been counterintuitive. Trump's main philosophy was, let's reward our allies and friends and punish our enemies. Now, that shouldn't be revolutionary thinking, but unfortunately, in DC foreign policy establishment, it was. We looked at Iran and said, this is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, designated so by multiple Republican and Democratic administrations. So we're not going to give the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism billions of dollars in sanctions relief. We're going to put the maximum economic pressure campaign on them. When we saw the opportunity to take out the world's largest terrorist and Qasem Soleimani, we did. And I think that is what led to peace in the Middle East, is that we had our priorities right. We weren't afraid to stand up for Israel. We weren't afraid to stand for the law of the land in the United States, which says that the U.S. Embassy should be in Jerusalem. President Trump made big and bold decisions as it relates to Israel that foreign policy analysts, Middle East analysts said for years, well, this will cause World War III. It didn't. What did it cause? It caused peace to break out, because there is peace through strength.
Morgan Ortagus, former State Department spokeswoman, now the candidate for the 5th Congressional District in Tennessee. Batzlacha, we thank you for joining us, and we'll be keeping tabs on the race going forward. Hopefully you can join us again down the road.
Thank you so much. Would love to. Thank you.